Okay, so joining me now is Ambassador Arun Kumar Singh. He was ambassador to the United States in 2015 and 2016. And it's certainly a very interesting turn of events, although many had already in India, I think, predicted a sort of Trump win. We already heard the External Affairs Minister yesterday saying that if Mr. Trump comes to power, things will only get, whoever wins, relations will only get better, but then reminding everyone that it was during Mr. Trump's time that it was the Quad was revived and a number of other things. How do you see the Trump win, Mr. Singh?
So I think, as you mentioned, as the External Affairs Minister mentioned a couple of days ago in Australia, I think whoever won, the relationship was likely to consolidate. We had some positive elements in the Trump 1.0. There were some negative aspects, including on trade-related issues. But Trump had taken several steps indicating that he saw advantage in the relationship and wanted to consolidate it. One, he had placed India on STA level 1, Strategic Trade Authorization level 1, in 2018, enabling highest level of technology releases. During the Galwan conflict in 2020, US had shared information, intelligence, had leased two drones to India, and had also shared winter clothing that was urgently required by armed forces who were moving to that area. In a manner different from past administrations, including the Obama administration, during one of Prime Minister's visit in the joint statement, there was a reference to the US now allowing the sale to India of armed drones, which the US was earlier reluctant to do. So I think those were the positive elements. So, on the
Sure.
positive side, the question would be that the Biden administration had done this major new initiative on critical and emerging technologies, which had taken the relationship to another level on artificial intelligence, quantum, biotech, semiconductors, 6G defense. And as a result of that, there were follow up steps. Six US companies announced investments in India in semiconductors. In defense, now there was talk of a defense technology partnership and startups in both countries being brought together for that. So I think a Trump administration would most likely want to continue with this because it is to the advantage of US companies also, but he will probably want to brand it differently. He will not want to be seen as doing something that the Biden administration may have done. So how
Right.
do we handle that? Second, the ISIT initiative, which was a very major initiative, because some of the difficulties that arose in the India-US relationship, including on the Russia-Ukraine issue, because we were doing ISIT, it enabled us to deal with the differences. But it was run out of the National Security Council. Now, under Trump, it will be a completely different National Security Council. Who are the personnel? What are the priorities? How are they looking at the issue of technology cooperation for development, or do they just want to leave it to the other agencies? All these elements will have an impact. So I would
Yes.
say that broadly positive, but the specific elements will have to watch in terms of how Trump defines his priorities and who are the people he brings into his administration.
Certainly. And there are also things that India should brace for. One is the morning tweet that might decide the news agenda for the day. Mr. Trump used his morning social media to talk about things like trade tariff barriers, his unhappiness with India on a number of issues there, his withdrawal of India's GSP status, his really persistent pressure that ensured that India cancelled all its oil imports from Iran and Venezuela. Of course, now we have the Russia Ukraine war and the Israel Gaza war. How do you really see Trump 2.0? Is it going to be more or less like Trump 1.0?
So I think the broad approach will be the same. But again, if you look at the books that some of the people who have worked very closely with him, former national security advisors, McMaster, Bolton, his decision making was chaotic. It was unpredictable, going back and forth. So one should be prepared for that. But that having been said, some of what he has been projecting from before, to some extent, he's been consistent. On Russia, he's been less adversarial than the Democrats have been. So one can't rule out that he may have the political capital to bring to an end the active phase of the conflict. I don't think the issues can be resolved, but if the active phase of the conflict is brought to an end, that will not be unhelpful from India's point of view. because then the India-Russia relationship will not come under the same kind of an adversarial gaze. So I think that would be one. We'll have to see what he does in West Asia, because he has been even more supportive of Israel than the Biden administration has been. He said publicly that Netanyahu should go ahead and do what he wants. He moved the U.S. embassy from from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which no administration had done. He unilaterally recognized Israeli sovereignty over Golan Heights, which again no U.S. administration had done. And just today, the Israeli Prime Minister has fired his defense minister, who was seen as the more moderating voice. So, does he really restrain some of the action that Israel is taking on the ground, or gives Israel a political cover? He may probably want to take a harder stance on Iran. Now, what does that mean for the Israel Iran dynamic, and what does it mean for the Iran Arab country dynamic? He's the one who had pushed through the Abraham Accords in 2020. Is he once again able to bring these countries together for a cooperative relationship with Israel, despite what's happening on the ground? So I think these are question marks, and we don't really know the answers to this.
Yeah, I know, and of course, the next few days will, and probably months, will tell us much more. Finally, if we are watching closely, you can imagine our neighborhood is watching closely. The Biden administration certainly played favorites, if you like, in the neighborhood, Bangladesh and Pakistan in particular. What do you see for South Asian countries? How do you see at least our neighbors viewing this victory?
So, on Bangladesh, for example, if you would have seen his recent tweet expressing concern about the situation of Hindus and the minorities, and I saw that more as aimed at getting votes from the Indian American community in the US at this stage of the voting. So that was one dimension. But how does he really assess what's happening there? The moment I think much will depend on people around him. What is the advice? Because I don't think there's a direct US interest really involved. So he'll have to handle it. In the case of Pakistan, if you recall, in 2017, they had come out with a South Asia strategy that was very critical of Pakistan. On 1st January 2018, Trump had tweeted that Pakistan has been hoodwinking us, taking aid from us, all aid must stop. So that happened. But then in 2019, when he wanted to get help from Pakistan to get an agreement going with the Taliban, then he suddenly reaches out to Pakistan. He invites Imran Khan to the White House. And there he tells Imran Khan that I'm ready to mediate on Kashmir, and that the Indian Prime Minister has asked him to mediate on Kashmir, and there was no truth to that. So at the moment, I don't see any vital US interest involved in Pakistan, aside from concerns related to counterterrorism or the fact that Pakistan has a certain number of nuclear weapons. So I don't see the Donald Trump administration focusing on that much, or anything happening there that we ought to be too concerned about. I think what we would probably want to watch is how does he define his relationship with China? Because it was Donald Trump, in contrast to the earlier administrations, in the national security strategy in December 2017, and then the 2018 national defense strategy, where they had clearly said that China is the main economic, technological, and military rival of the United States. And the US needs to take a firm action against that. So how does he define that strategy is something that I think we'd need to watch carefully.
And it is that relationship with that neighbor of India's, China, that the Trump administration will be watched for most closely. And Arun Singh, thanks so much for speaking to us at The Hindu.
Thank you.